Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from deltacx. We're a full service CX and UX agency. And today is, as promised, once a month, we're going to have the Three Musketeers office hours Ask Us Anything with special guests Darren Hood and Dr. Nick Fine. I would give you the rules, but there aren't any. So just remember, if you'd like to ask a question, you can do so in the chat room. I am monitoring LinkedIn and YouTube. You can also ask through deltacx.link/ask, which will come into my email. So I will check that separately. And let's see, we have already Kayleen who says, I like the premier scheduling feature on YouTube, takes away the anxiety of being late. Well, I added the countdown for you, Kayleen, so I hope you like that. Let me bring them in. No further ado. Let's welcome Darren and Dr. Nick. And of course, let me give them each a little bit of time to introduce themselves while I set up all the chat systems. Darren, who the heck are you and why do we love you so?
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here today. Thanks, Debbie. Good to see you, Dr. Nick. I'm Darren Hood. I am a 20-plus year UX professional, experienced design professionals. We're starting to say a little bit, still getting used to that. My footprint spans all the way up to Fortune 50 in my experience. I'm skilled across what I like to explain as all four of the pillars associated with UX. I am, in addition to being a practitioner, I'm also a professor at Kent State University for their Masters of UX program. I teach the entire curriculum there. I am a professor at Lawrence Technological University. I'm on the verge of becoming a professional at Michigan State University. I'm in talks to become a professor at Michigan Tech University and Syracuse University. So all about helping the folks. All about helping everybody build their acumen.
and bodybuilder and everything else. And okay, Dr. Nick, tell us a little about you. Long walks on the beach.
It's always a tough act to follow Darren. By the way, before I introduce myself, it's Darren's birthday tomorrow. If you can guess his age in the comments, I'd love to see a quick poll. Anyway, moving right along. I'm Nick Fine. Hello. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Debbie. Hi, Darren. The Three Musketeers are back, or Three Amigos. I'm a 10-year UX pro. What have I been doing? I've been working both private and public sector. I've been working agency side. I've been working client side. I've worked all over the place, and I'm pretty noisy on LinkedIn. You probably know me from there. I'm effectively a psychologist and a computer scientist, which equals HCI, human computer interaction. And when you take HCI into the commercial world, you're left with UX. And that's where I'm at. So I'm very much an HCI person in the UX world.
Super, super. So, of course, this is Office Hours Ask Us Anything. We are promising to stay way too long today. There may be bathroom breaks, and we're going to stay and answer questions. I already have 3 questions queued up for all y'all. So I'm going to read you the first one, and as usual, we can just take turns. Who's that, Darren?
This
Mr.
is
Cuddles.
Rocky.
Hi, Rocky. Very sweet, Mr. Cuddles, I'm sure. I hope he doesn't scratch your eyes out like in the Marvel movies. Hi, Rocky. Rocky says, Jared Spool. So anyway, we'll give Rocky all of our bad lines. He'll be the sock puppet. Oh, very good. Womp womp. As usual, we'll take turns answering questions. If you are dying to answer it first, let me know. Otherwise, I will just pick people to answer things first. The first question we got came in earlier, and it says, any resume writing tips that you have that are specific to the CX and UX industry? Resume writing tips. Don't forget to get your notepads out today, kids. Darren, any resume writing tips specifically for our industry?
Oh my goodness. The short answer is no. Resume writing is resume writing. And you have your chronological resumes, you have your functional resumes, which what I have to do because I actually have experience across several different worlds. So if I'm posting for an academic position, if I'm trying to get a professor position, then I'm going to gear my resume toward that. And I'm going to match my resume with the job description as best I can. A lot of people make the mistake of having one resume, and that really, you're trying to make one size fit all. And that doesn't really pan out. So resumes are resumes. Hiring process is hiring process. I will recommend one book. It's called Knock 'em Dead. They've been producing that book for at least the last 20 to 25 years. I highly recommend it. They update it on a regular basis. Get some tips out of that, but you're going to have to match your resume to the post. You want to make sure that you're highlighting what they're looking for. And I know people will talk about that software. I'm going to steer away from that software and trying to match things by keywords. Just make sure that you match it, and that's it. I'll keep it sort of short.
All right. Nick, anything to add about CX and UX resume tips?
Unfortunately, not. I'm learning as much as you guys are. It's completely, I guess, an anathema to me. It's random. It doesn't make any sense. Being too honest doesn't seem to be the way forward. I don't have any honest advice I can give that would be of any use, because I'm in the same boat. I'm getting the same rejections.
Yeah, me too.
Sorry, that's really put a downer on it. Sorry, but
right.
That's the facts.
Yeah, so
I'm actually glad you said that. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. We're just doing a little crying moment. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say,
Wilson! Thank you, Wilson, so much. Wilson has
awesome. Here we go. Here comes it explodes.
Thank you,
it almost
Wilson.
Looked like Ling's. Anybody see somebody look like Ling's cars was in there? But
yeah, it's a bunch of Twitch emoji for some reason. But thank you, Wilson. So thank you so much for the $3 Canadian that we will get delicious cheese. Sorry, Darren, go ahead.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm glad Dr. Nick said what he said. I will say, don't be discouraged, because he's right. You're honest, and you feel. I mean, people are lying, and they'll get the job over you. A lot of times, don't let that cause you to change your tune. Don't become like them. Don't let the Borg get you. Don't get assimilated. Keep matching the resume with the job posting. Keep being yourself. Keep selling yourself on what you bring to the table, and don't get tricked into playing those games. It will come back and bite you later, but be patient. Be patient. Patience is, we need patience to excel at UX anyway. Or why not demonstrate it in the application process? So let's be patient.
Yeah, Kayleen, don't bother drawing emotes for the podcast. I cannot customize these yet from the system I'm using. I might have to shop around systems. The only thing that I would add to resume tips, because I agree with what's been said, is I think some people in UX think they have to over-design their resume or CV, or visually design their resume or CV. And you end up seeing these wild colors and lots of columns and weird bar charts that have no axes or labels. And it's like on a scale... Meaning. Yeah, on a scale of unknown to unknown, I'm 80% acture, so I never know what that actually means. So I would say look out for a lot of that meaningless visual stuff. Leave out meaningless visual stuff. Not only is it bizarre and confusing to us, because I expect you to UX your own resume, but also these automatic resume scanners are not going to be... They're not going to see that crap anyway. So,
Exactly.
So never mind. Wilson says, I'm procrastinating on my design challenge for that job he's interviewing for. I don't blame you. I saw it. All right. So our next question came in, and since it came in anonymously, I'm going to put it up on the screen. And it could be a Larry Marine question. He'll be here next week. It says, task analysis is best done after conducting observational research. What would you recommend doing after conducting interviews? I assume if you're not doing observational research and you're only doing interviews, what are some of the better research artifacts that you can create afterwards? Nick is making interesting face, so I'm going to throw it at you first.
Okay, I think what you're asking is, how do I analyze an interview, or what's a qualitative way of what's a way of understanding qualitative research? So the only way that I do it, and I guess lots of people have their own ways. All I can do is relate to the way that I do it, which I think is pretty standard. It's agency style, which is an insight report. I produce an insight report. It used to be a Word document, and I learned very quickly that no one's reading that and it's garbage. But agencies used to enjoy producing thick things. Nowadays, it's about engagement and actually communicating, so that's much better. I produce a deck, a keynote or a PowerPoint deck, which is a summary and with appendices of what I've done. Now, you want to understand about the analysis bit. There's lots of ways of doing this. The simple way to do it, the way I teach people, is you're looking for themes. It depends obviously what your script is and what your research objective is and what you're actually investigating, but there will be some themes that you're listening out for, some answers, some hypotheses that you're looking for. You're looking for obviously for that consistency across your sample, and you've got to be honest and open and objective about it. So what I tend to do is for each of the script tasks, it might be a success or failure, it might be a time to complete task. There might be lots of other quantitative metrics that go alongside that. So you can take the quants and obviously report on those. Those are easy. The qualitative stuff, report the weighting of it. So if you've got a sample of 12 users, you can say 8 out of those 12 people were able to easily find the call to action and therefore buy the red shoes or whatever it is you're doing. Do not make percentages. And I try to tell this to everybody. It's just my opinion. You can fight me and disagree with me and all of that stuff. But percentages, especially when we're dealing with smaller sample sizes, give a really inappropriate impression. And that's not what we want to do here. You don't say 80% of 3 people. It's like, really? Come on, man. We're not doing that.
I always know. I can always tell when someone is working with 7 people because it's in 14s. 14%, right. 28%. Whenever I see the 14s and 28s, I go, "Oh, you met 7 people."
Yeah. So,
and then they just told everybody that they
14% of people. It's one person. It's one.
So yeah.
Well,
so there's that. Go on, Darren.
Sorry, I did it again.
Shut up. Go on. No. There's a nasty delay here.
Just a quick little thing in there, and it go on, but. People are telling folks that they're not qualified, that they lack experience when they do things like that. So you think, here's my results, but your results say one thing, but they also say something you didn't intend on saying. If the results are coming across in 14s, like what Debbie just mentioned, and anybody, throw this other little thing in there, you always have to be ready to meet the needs of and account for the most anal person that you're going to be presenting to, because that person is going to be either your biggest advocate or your biggest threat. And those are the people that are going to pick up on that. Everybody else, they have no idea. Ooh, look at the pretty colors. Just somebody else is going to say, they must have had a small sample set. And now you're not going to get past that person because they're going to go from being the most anal to being the most outspoken. So you have to anticipate those people and account for them. That was it. That was it. Sorry.
All right.
Nick. Sorry,
thanks. Quick side note to my guests. How are you enjoying watching the chat rooms?
I'm not.
Exactly. No, you don't have to. I'm trying. It's distracting. You don't have to.
It's going so fast. I have up on 2 screens. And I'm like, gone. Wow, it's gone.
Yeah, exactly. So now those of you who use deltacx.link/ask to ask your questions, which is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, know that you have options in how you ask your question. And we have received our very first video question, which I'm now going to take all of us off the screen, and I'm going to play our question, who is from a very good friend of the show, Kayleen. So please hold.
Hi, I'm a noob. Should I be writing posts on LinkedIn? If so, what should I write? And what should I not write? Or should I not be posting anything at all? Lord knows we don't need more people pretending to be experts.
I love that. That's the best question ever. That's awesome. Well done, Kayleen. That's so awesome. I can't begin to. That's so good.
So should a UX newbie like Kayleen post on LinkedIn? And if so, what should she write about?
I'll tell you what you should write about, Kayleen.
I'm going to go with Dr. Nick first. He's ready. He's chomping.
Okay. I'll be quick. I'll be really quick.
I believe you.
The way that I do it is be authentic, be open, be honest. Don't pretend to be somebody that you're not. People these days,
Yes.
you can see from my posts, are super responding to just being open, honest, vulnerable. If you're, don't overdo it. It's not like, oh, look at me, but don't overdo it. Look how great I am. There's a middle ground of reality. This is my experience, and I'm asking you a genuine question. Can you help me? Or can you relate to this? Is it just me? Whatever that post is about, and if it's just straightforward and honest, you'll have interaction. If you start, as you say, making you out to be somebody that you're not, people, I hope, can smell it a mile away these days, but we'll see. That's my 2 cents.
Okay.
Yep. And I feel the same exact way. Be genuine, be you. Anybody out there who sees me on LinkedIn, or on Twitter or on Instagram now, I thought I'd invade that space and see there's so many fakers out there that just going out to just blow them up and call them out all the time. I'm being genuine. I'm saying what's on my mind. I also have a standard rule. If you don't know it to be true, don't say it. That's a standard. So that's what's weird when sometimes people decide that they're going to become combative. Do you really want to see my data? Are you really ready for that? And if they're agreeable and if they decide to be an adult, I will have private conversations with people about some of my posts on LinkedIn that nobody sees. And they're going, okay, well, I didn't think about it that way before. Oh, let me take a look at what you're talking about so they can see what's behind it, because I tend to have a method to my madness in my posts. We have constraints. You only have so much space, so I can only say so much. And so it's always usually a part of a whole. Some people get that and don't treat my posts as if I'm trying to be all inclusive. I can't be. But I'm just going to say what I've got to say. And for God's sake, don't be something you're not. And something I said, I did a talk for students of UX recently, student of UXD. And I said, one person started a YouTube channel because she wanted to share her journey. I said, thank you. People need to hear about your journey. There are going to be things that happen with your journey that other folks, especially other noobs, need to hear. I would like to hear your story. I'm interested in seeing how things go for you. I'm interested in seeing where your challenges are. I'm interested in seeing what's going on and learning about what's happening to you that might be unique to you. So if you don't share that unique story, it doesn't get out there. So those are the types of things to post. And some people are out there, they're just sharing things because they just want to have a voice. They just want to be heard. And that's where the narcissism comes into play. They don't know what they're talking about. It's blatantly obvious when they don't know what they're talking about. And I've actually made it a point to start calling people out sometime about it. Somebody was celebrating recently, because sometimes people are saying something and they are talking about their journey, but they don't realize that their journey has a little bit of a problem with it. It's a little tainted. And there was somebody, some of you saw this, where somebody was celebrating a certification and they referred to it as I just completed a robust UX certification. And I got curious because I knew it smelled. So I went to the site where the person got the certification from, and everything they said was incorrect. They tried to pretend that they literally said experience design is new. They literally said that experience design is not new. Debbie's eye. And then they went on to say that we've got this certification and you can complete it in 9 days. Okay, well, that's ridiculous. So I said, you can't call a 9-day program robust. So here's so that I don't go on too long. If you're going to post something, be willing to be accountable for it. Too, if you're going to say something, because somebody's going to call you on it, some way, form, or fashion. Somebody's going to call you on it, and be ready to dialogue about it. Be ready if you say something that comes across where you're trying to speak authoritatively, somebody's going to challenge you on it. Engage in the conversation. There's nothing wrong, as long as it's adult conversation, but not the people who act like kids. Remember when we were kids? Did too, did not, did too, did not, did. No, that kind of stuff should never happen on LinkedIn. It's absolutely ridiculous and unethical. And it is like a bunch of kids. And when that happens, I delete people. I get rid of it. So anyway, tell your story, be genuine. Like Dr. Nick was saying, be genuine. Don't be something you're not, because somebody smells you if you do. And you're not going to want to deal with that, because they might not be as nice or wanting to help like we do. We want to help you. Other people, they just get nasty about it. It's not constructive at all.
And what I would add is we've actually done some episodes on this in the past. There's episode 72 in the live stream podcasts playlist where we had on a LinkedIn expert, and he talked about kind of defining your personal brand and posting to LinkedIn. And some of his advice was kind of decide who you are and stay in that lane. So if someone is obviously, you can smell a post from me a mile away. You generally know what it's going to be about. I'm going to tell a story about something good or bad that happened, and I'm going to have something in the middle or at the end that I'm hoping we're going to change to make this better. That's the typical arc of my posts, and I've just decided that's the way that I want to approach LinkedIn as much as possible, to call some things out as being good or bad, but to have some sort of lesson in there that's actionable about what we can change. And I'm not worried about you, Kayleen, because I know you're not going to go out there and post like, here's how you make personas, because you don't need to be a thought leader this week. And a lot of this stuff comes from people who somewhere heard or read, like, try to look like a thought leader. And I try to remind people that the definition of a thought leader is an expert to the experts. The people that the experts look to and admire, like a Larry Marine or somebody. Hypothetically, that's a thought leader because we're looking at that guy. And there's way too many people on LinkedIn and social media and things who are hoping to be thought leaders, pretending to be thought leaders. And I even see a bunch of them announcing that they're thought leaders. So, which to me immediately undoes it. It's like, I'm humble. No, you're not. So I think I would just echo that and just say, the short version of what everybody said was write what you know, and don't try to write the things you don't know. And I think that's where other people get into trouble, and why you said we don't need more people pretending to be experts, because that they're not writing what they know. Charlene had a follow-up question. Oh, Nick.
The acid test is these so-called thought leaders. Where are their thoughts? I mean, you can say you're a thought leader unless you're publishing your thoughts. No one's seeing them.
Some assembly required.
That's why the real thought leaders are putting their balls on the line and putting their thoughts out there. Sorry, pardon. That's a nasty analogy. Sorry, but there we go.
Yeah, y'all know that we permit that here. So we've got a follow-up question from Charlene. So remember, everybody, send in your questions through the chat room. I'm keeping an eye on LinkedIn and YouTube. You can also send it in through the link at the top, deltacx.link/ask. It doesn't have to be video. It can be typed. So Charlene's follow-up, Kayleen says she's crying. Follow-up question.
So am I. Right, not.
Follow-up question from what Kayleen asked. Charlene says, I really want to write about how bad is this Google Coursera course about how do we take the, well, it's like the sentence didn't quite end, but I guess, if she wants to write something negative about the Google course, how does she take an approach to saying something negative or disagreeing on like a LinkedIn? Is that the right place for it? Darren, what would be your advice to someone who would like to review and by the way, she took the course. So she's not just me looking at the website and going, this sounds like crap.
Right.
And she's experienced. She's in her, fourth, fifth, whatever year working in UX. Like, she's not a newbie.
That's excellent. I think it's a great question because it speaks to which social media or which venue do I post to and what should I post? Because you've got LinkedIn. And remember, I mentioned earlier, there are post constraints. So you're only going to get to say so much. So when you're trying to figure out, well, should I talk about this? The answer is yes. Especially because of the experience that Shailene has, because of what she's experienced firsthand. That gives her, she gets what's happening in that Google program from a different lens. Because people who are going through that course, through that program, and don't have the knowledge that Shailene has, there's certain things that they can't see, they can't pick up on.
They don't even know.
Yeah, no idea. So are you going to put a little post? I can't remember the exact character limit, but you're limited. And so how much can you really communicate? And in that amount of time, that space you've got, in that constraint, how much value can you deliver in that space? In hearing what she said, I think that would really make for a great Medium article. We got to start putting better. Medium sucks, okay? Flat out, in general, for UX. Not for everything, but for US. And the general process sucks because there are no editors, which means that there's nobody to stop you. So there's no filter between the writer and the click the publish button. There's no filter. So that means that everybody that's partaking we have to be the filters of what we come across. If you could put together tell your story, even on YouTube. I know people doing things like that on YouTube. YouTube would be great. Medium would be great. And that gives you more, you don't have the spatial constraints that you have on just making a LinkedIn or a Facebook post or something like that. So that's what I would suggest. That way you can tell the story. It won't be without context. That's the risk sometimes of posting something to LinkedIn, that you end up not being able to include all the context, and that's where people get lost. And then you still have the risk, I'll throw this in there too, and hand it over to Dr. Nick, is that no matter what you say sometime, people always hear what they want to hear. And they have a really bad habit of hearing what you didn't say. They heard what you said in their head, which really isn't you. And then they get so carried away that they respond to what you said in their head, even though it wasn't you. And then now you can't have a conversation anymore. So
yeah, I had that recently. I said, I'm not going to fight a ghost. You know, you just made up a whole bunch of stuff about me, and then you fought me on that. And, you know, I'm not going to play that game and defend myself against a bunch of stuff that you made up. So look out for that. Dr. Nick, what do we suggest for Charlene, who would really like to find some place to write about how bad the Google course is?
I totally agree with Darren's thinking around Medium, although maybe not Medium, but Medium's as long as it is somewhere that is indexed, that Google will get into, because obviously a LinkedIn post is very transient, and unless it goes absolutely viral, even then it's a flash, and it'll be gone within a few weeks. So it needs to be somewhere that somebody says, "What's the Google Coursera course like in Google?" Which again, if you look at Amazon reviews, that should be illegal what Amazon are doing with the reviews. I've got a whole piece of research I'm putting together about how their algorithm appears to work. But it's in their interest for negativity to be minimized. That's the same with LinkedIn. I asked the question recently, why isn't there a disagree button? This sort of negativity is not what brands want around them. But so if you're going to independently review a Google thing, even though it's going to be indexed by the bots, it needs to be something that everybody else can find when they have the same question that you have. That's the best. I mean, it's like a Trustpilot type thing. We need one of those for courses.
And what I would add to that is I do agree that it's best to write something out a little bit more thorough, because I think LinkedIn stops at 1,300 characters, which is fairly short. Not that I think you need to write 5,000 words on this, but I think that first of all, you'd want to establish that you are experienced in UX. And so you're looking at this course from the perspective of someone who's been working in it for years, not a fellow newbie or recent learner. Then you would want to establish what you noticed about it and where you thought it was going right or wrong. And I know you've expressed some of that very nicely in our Slack channel, but that would go in the article. One thing Charlene pointed out was that Google seems to differentiate between user-centered design and the UX process. And when they refer to the UX process, they mean, hold on, design thinking. I know. So, yeah. Totally. Price is Right loser. So I think, Charlene, you're going to want the format of Medium to be able to kind of walk through who you are and the pros and cons that you saw. I do think Medium is a good place for that because it ranks really well in Google. And you can put it on your own website under your own blog, but if your website isn't ranking well on Google, nobody's ever going to see it. So my thought is people do need to see these things, and I would say to put it on Google. Elizabeth, I see your question. I'm going to put it after a couple of other questions we have, so I promise I see it. So that would be my suggestion for Charlene. And while we're at it, Charlene actually had another totally unrelated question that she asked earlier when I think Darren introduced himself. Oh, Darren wants to say more. Come on, Darren. Lightning round.
Oh, quick thing. I got to throw this. Sorry. Because I saw that she asked another question about the same thing. She said, what about putting it on my own site? Here's the catch.
Yes, that's what I was answering.
Do it, Kayleen. Do it on your site. But then Medium has a feature that allows you to take something that was published on another site and publish that on Medium.
Yeah.
So that will allow you to get the traffic on your site and then get the traffic through Medium. So you do it on your site first, put the URL, go through that process in Medium. That way it'll be on both. It won't hurt.
And I've been posting to Medium completely. I stopped putting stuff on my own site or blog just because nobody was finding it. But yet people find my stuff on Medium every day. And I haven't done anything special to make that happen. So there's that.
Yep.
Charlene asked this question, I think when Darren was introducing himself, so it might be more for Darren. And the question was, silly question, but what's the difference between a university UX course and an HCI course?
Two answers to that. In general, nothing. Is just the buzzword or whatever label they're choosing to use. University of Michigan has a Master's of HCI program. Everything that they're doing in that program, except for the coding, is UX related. Another program will be a master's in interaction design, or another program might be a master's in experience architecture, or another one might say UX. And if you look at the curriculums, everything is the same. So there's really no difference. Human computer interaction is essentially UX. Some people will beg to differ with that, but when you really get into the weeds and look at it and talk to enough people, you find there's no difference. I've been doing HCI stuff since 1995. Anybody who's they didn't start calling it UX until 2003, 2004 at large. Everything was called something else before that. And HCI, interaction design, and information architecture were the first three big names or titles that got out there. So it's nothing. It's just a matter of, if you see HCI, look at service design. Sorry, I looked over and I saw that.
Good. I sent you guys the chat room. You get to watch it.
Yeah. Service design you can look at it as CX and you could look at it as UX too. It depends upon how people are doing it. But as far as defining the discipline, service design is easily included in UX. Some people will be it'll be completely off their radar. It depends. I've seen both. And it depends. I've been able to do things that are service design related in my UX work, and you take me out of that company and put me in another one, and it just doesn't fit. So that's where we want to not get caught up in what people are calling different things. And where people are sort of, in their mind, siloing what we do. It can all fit under UX. It all operates under UX, again, depending on where you work.
I think the next question is going to create some fire, so I'm going to have Nick answer it first. This is from Elizabeth.
Let me answer the last one first, though.
Oh, yeah, sure. I didn't know you had something to add to that. Nick, over to you in the studio.
Because I'm not going to get into this right now, but there is a distinction between HCI and UX, at least from my perspective. I don't think now is the time to do it. I think we should do that in a separate hour. I think it's a really great question, and we should get into real detail on it. But for example, and I'll just using my journey as an example for you guys, when I defended my thesis, my PhD thesis, and I had an MSc in HCI, human computer interaction, I couldn't get an interview. I couldn't get anywhere. And I was considered an HCI expert. I've presented at conference and published and all kinds of stuff. But when it comes to the commercial world and working on a project, there's no way that my 1 year of master's or my 5 years of PhD or even my 3 years of psychology undergraduate in any way prepare you as a working UX professional. And that's where there's a big disconnect. I mean, so the HCI is all the academics, all the knowledge, all the frameworks, all of the thinking is in the HCI. And that's what kind of powers me and Darren and other people who come from that direction. the UX bit, and that's what I've been working so hard to do for 10 years, is to translate the HCI bits into the UX bits so that they can be used in the real world. Where do you apply them? But more importantly, how do you apply them? Because that's the tricky stuff. Or when do you apply it? The strategic bits. It all comes together, and that's why our practice of UX, whether you're on design or research, is inherently experiential. It is a progression. It's an apprenticeship. Once you get that apprenticeship, you've got the bones, which is HCI, and the meat is the experience of UX, and that together creates beautiful experience.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Longer,
that's okay. We still have time. Everybody, send your questions in either through the chat room or through the deltacx.link/ask. I am not seeing as many questions as usual, so I don't know if everyone is just stoned out of their minds or sleepy or still recovering from Easter chocolate. But, please, is Abby's question still on the list? Yes, Abby's question is on the list. So, in fact, Abby's question is next, and then we'll do Elizabeth's. Thank you, Kayleen. Abby's question was, and I'm going to have to copy and paste it. And it should be here in the YouTube. Hold on, let me roll back. Here it is. I am currently redesigning UI for a product soon to develop the MVP and apparently going for a hybrid design due to limited resources. And when I asked him for a little bit more information on hybrid design, he said one design for Android and one design for iOS. So I guess this is where the company just says, let's not do separate designs for Android and iOS. We'll just do one and deploy them individually. And his question, which got cut off here on my screen, but it says, any suggestions, recommendations, warnings, or resources? Now, there's usually a 14-second delay with YouTube, so if you have a follow-up question, ask now. He'll see it in about 14 seconds.
Wow. I know I'll start off on this one. I know that if you're working on that, I hear the term hybrid, and I was wondering exactly where he was going with that. And also, when I hear the beginning of the question, when you're talking about redesigning the UI, and I'll just throw my mindset out on this. I'm not thinking about if somebody's coming to me as a UX professional and I'm working on a project, and I've done this before where we knew that there were going to be X number of users that were going to be on iOS and X number of users that were going to be on Android. And we would design, and whether we're using Figma or the team was using XD, the larger portion of the team was using XD, we would just design, and we would have style guides that were established for the iOS side and how they were going to do things and style things that way. And then you have ways that people are going to design things on the Android side. You have this basic way, well, two ways that they did it. You would see a screen that would show the iOS and the Android designs next to each other, so they would know where the variances were in conjunction with the style guide, but just presenting it to make it easier for the developers to know what they were going to do. The fact that you're redesigning something is a non-factor from a UX perspective when you're actually getting into doing the work. I'm talking about the actual production of the work. You need, because man, this is there's so much to this question. You're gonna from the UX perspective, you gotta roll out things that the team who's actually building it have a solid reference point, is what I'm trying to get at. So we put everything together so people could see it. Okay, we're gonna do it like this on Android, we're gonna do it like this on iOS, but we've accounted for how things are gonna roll on both sides. And the name of the game was matching the style guides. We already know what the needs are, we already know what we're trying to accomplish. So, I mean, from that perspective, that's part of why I wrestle with this one. I think that there are some factors in the question that from a UX perspective, they don't matter to me. They really don't matter. How are we going to represent the experience for each of these different operating systems, these mobile operating systems? And that's pretty much it. And we just want to make sure that heuristically we're sound, and we want to make sure that we're operating within the constraints. The style guide helped us to identify that, and that's pretty much it. I think that I'm not sure if if Abby is more of a developer, than a UX person, but there are some things in that question that they don't move the needle for me one way or another. I just want to make sure I'm delivering something that people can refer to when they're trying to do the work. And I saw a couple things in the chat. I didn't get to see them. They talked about the coding and stuff. That's off my radar. I'm not even touching that.
Yeah. Nick, something to add here?
I'm so glad you said that, because I'm thinking, Christ, I hope she doesn't ask me. Sorry.
You don't have to. You can pass. You can optional.
No. But the reason why I say that is because I would have usually, that's a kind of a head of mobile or head of mobile product or product. That it usually that sort of that strategy question, that's in their wheelhouse rather than ours. I mean, that's why I'm grateful for Darren gave the answer that he did, because it's nigh on the same answer. It's like, look, I don't care. Tell me what platform we're on, and I'm going to go ahead and do it for you. That's kind of how my brain works. I'm glad we're on the same page, D.
My response to this is, so far at the companies where I've worked, whenever someone says we're going to do a hybrid iOS and Android design, and we're just going to do one and release it to both, almost every time they've done an iOS design, and then they've released that to Android. Now, as an Android user, I can tell when a company did an iOS design and released it to Android, because there are lots of hallmarks of Android design that they avoid using, or common paradigms on Android that I see are not in the app. And I can say, oh, I can tell somebody designed this for iOS and just ported it over to Android. So I think that when you can imagine that it saves money, but just keep an eye on this, because ultimately you are usually giving a little bit of that middle finger to the Android users, which I think statistically are still a larger number of people than the iOS users. So be careful, because I know that when I get an app that was clearly made for iOS and it's being pushed to me, I might have a few opinions on that. I might have a few opinions and impressions of the company and what they decided to invest in their Android app. And I went through this with a famous company some years ago, and I won't say who, but I sat in a meeting where they said, well, we think our iOS users are worth investing in because they spend more money than the Android users. And, maybe the Android app isn't really worth investing in. But funny enough, we did see that the Android people shop more often than the iOS people, but the iOS people spend more. And I said, well, look, I'm on Android and I can tell you your app stinks. So the problem is, how can you have a good measurement of how much Android users could be spending when you've given us a substandard app? You can't say, well, Android users, they don't shop in our app that much. Why should we? It's terrible. We might as well go to mobile web. So you have to be careful of some of the stories that people tell themselves to make decisions like this, because very often they're very flawed and they're snakes eating their own tails. So as an Android user, I say don't forget about us, because there are some things that are unique to Android that iOS hasn't picked up yet, but I'm sure will in the next year or two. And we should design for that. We should make the best experience we can for the operating system that people are on the end. Kayleen, I see your question, and I will put that after Elizabeth's question, because now I don't want to forget Elizabeth. And don't forget, everybody, this is going to be an extra long session today. If you have to go to the bathroom, please do. Abi has a follow-up question, but just in fairness to other people, I'm going to put his follow-up question at the end because it's not completely related. So let's get some other peeps on the board, and let's bring up Elizabeth's question, which looks like this. I recently read an article on UX Matters that said that many companies believe user research is optional. However, I would argue that without UX research, you can't claim to do UX design. What are your thoughts? Nick, do you want to go first on this one this time?
Yeah.
Are you okay?
I mean,
we're all
chomping at the bit, because it's like, that's a red flag to a UX bull. It really is. We've had, look, listen, it's almost like a troll-like question. Yes, user research should not be optional, but I'm trying to put it in terms that show you it's a bit like, I don't know, like flying an airplane without trying it out first. I mean, that's a really stupid analogy, but the point being is you don't want to find out post live that it hasn't met the needs of your users, and that's the simple insurance, the simple protection against your return on investment. I mean, that's the very basics of product development and business. So there's no point building crap. And people are going to start to learn that over the next decade, that without user research, you build crap. And when I say crap, I mean stuff that doesn't make money, stuff that gets you in trouble and won't get you budget again next year, stuff that gets you fired, What's the smiley face work for?
Oh yeah, they're when people put emojis in the YouTube chat, they pop up randomly on the screen on top of us.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I wasn't. Okay, cool. It looked like it came out of your head. Yeah, no, that's it. That's it from me. I mean, I think, don't do user research and find out. No, this is the problem. People who don't do user research don't find out. They just have really weak or average results and really average products and really lots of costs. Hopefully you'll start to see that copying that goes on between brands, that looking over the fence at the neighbors and then copying them. When they start seeing them all doing the good work, they'll be like, shit, we better do that too. And I'm hoping, please God, that happens in my lifetime.
Darren, something to add while I look for a screenshot that I recently took?
Oh boy. Yeah, here we go. Okay, let me start this one off by saying that I have UX Matters has for a very long time been one of my absolute favorite places to go and read articles, posts about user experience. And for years, they've been very, very good. For some reason, and sorry, UX folks, UX Matters folks, but recently there has been some articles that have been posted that are questionable. Just recently, I think we've all either said or read this before, that if you take the research out of UX, it's no longer UX, it's just X. So, because we've got to have insights, and there's going to be two sides to what I'm about to say in wrapping the first part of it up. They mention in the question, the company doesn't want to do research. We need to make sure that we're not allowing what the company says to define who we are and what we do. Let's make sure we don't miss that. When a company doesn't want to do research, that's an inappropriate approach to doing UX. Now, that's the end of number one. Number two is that when you flip that script in the real world, there are times, whether it's budget, time, or things of that nature, we don't get to do research the way we want to. We don't get to do the research, as much research as we want to. We get this thrown at us from time to time. We've got this done, and we got to get it done a certain amount of time. What is your strategy? How are you going to handle this? And what I have always, one of the reasons why I say that heuristics should be the first thing out of the UX person's toolbox is because that's something that can give you something. When you don't have the ability or the budget to do research the way you feel should be done, heuristics consist of common convention, best practices, and proven principles, the vast majority of which have already been researched. And a lot of people actually group heuristic analysis in with research. So if you can't go full force on research, you should be able to use heuristics. And with X number of people, you find X number of issues with the design. It can inform redesign. It can inform new design. Heuristics is the backup way to go. And even if you are doing research, you should still be including heuristics so you don't end up doing a bunch of unnecessary research and wasting resources. So if you do research, hopefully you can. If not, and whether you do or you don't, you should be bringing in heuristics as part of that.
I've got something to add, but Nick, go ahead, you first, and then I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, just very quickly. The reason why the company doesn't want to do research is likely cost-based rather than time or anything else. So if you look at the cost of the entire service or product development, what percentage of that is user research? Because it's usually, even when you're doing it well, a much smaller percentage of the bigger cost. And that's what is your insurance policy. So a way maybe you can look at approaching this is it's an insurance policy. It's a tiny amount of money, and it has a massive multiplier on the ROI or the benefits that you get from building this thing.
What is on my face? Do I have chocolate on my face? Or is that just a pimple? Anyway, moving on.
Can I tag in one more other thing too?
Fine,
Sorry.
go ahead. I'll check my face.
Just something
Go ahead.
Kayleen just said. I'll make it real quick, and you can look for that chocolate real quick. There are a lot of older articles, to Kayleen's point that she just made. There are definitely some older articles, but one of the beautiful things about Sound UX is that Sound UX content has a very, 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 very long shelf life, which is why you can still read Jesse James Garrett's book that was written in the early 2000s and still get you and apply it in 2021. So some of the articles are older, but you'll find that they're still, the principles and the things they talk about are still useful. Bruce Tognazzini wrote his guidelines for interaction design, for optimizing interaction design. Those interaction design principles, they're still applicable today. So they're long shelf life. These things are not faddish.
Right.
They're sound, good information. Not like this stuff today where somebody takes Moore's law and throws a pretty picture on it and everybody goes, ooh, but it didn't really change anything. That's fad. That's a faddish approach. That's a Reddit type approach to UX. A dystopian view of UX is what I've started to call it. No, those old concepts and things they're still valuable.
Here's what I'd like to add. So each year in the past few years, I've been ramping up a little bit more some of my approach to speaking to non-CX, non-UX people when I do different conference talks. This year, I have ramped it up even further. And every year I rename my talk and I rewrite my talk. So this year, my talk for, hi, thank you, Kayleen, for the smile. Kayleen wrote, human psychology is not a fan, smiley face. And we got the smiley face. My talk this year for non-UX audiences is called Improving Agility by Using Customers' Definitions of Quality and Done. And I'm going to be out there pushing how we need to be customer-centric and use the customer's definitions of quality and done. And a lot of that revolves around research, proper research. And I want to show you a slide that I showed the other day. I debuted my talk to a group of agile coaches and scrum masters at a well-known American financial company. And my slide that I'm about to put up just has kind of a graph roughly showing how it's a variation of something I saw Adaptive Path put up years ago. And it's a graph showing how much our risk and cost increase on a project the closer we get to releasing the product. And I asked them to draw a point on the graph as to where they would like to learn that our product is flawed and our company is going in the wrong direction. And here's what that looked like. I think one person missed the point and didn't know where to put the point. But as you can see, a room full of agile coaches and scrum masters pretty much all picked CX and UX research or early concepts or even planning as the time when they would want to know that we are going in the wrong direction. And I think if we can continue to put messages out like this, that we can start to sway the people who have the control, because right now the people who have the control at many companies are the agile coaches and the scrum masters. And tomorrow I'm doing a keynote for a marketing conference, and I made a variation of that slide where at the end I put, and the marketing costs, like now that we've released it, the marketing costs, and I'm gonna ask the marketing people the same thing. When would you like to know that our product is not right for our customers and marketing this pile of crap is going to suck? And I'm going to see where they drop points on that graph. And this is going to be the axe that I'm wielding this year. I'm going to be fighting very much for customer centricity. And if you want to throw agile and lean around, that's fine. But why aren't we defining quality and done the way our customers do? So I'm sorry I've missed everything the chat room just said to go off on my little speech. But to me, I think that this is going to turn around. I think it's going to be more in the next 2 years than the next 10. But I think that if we can keep pushing the idea that agile and lean or fake agile and fake lean are going in the wrong direction without being based in qualitative research, I think we have a chance of making a difference. So I'm just going to keep putting out talks and training. We did the HR training is now out and everybody can see it and take it. And next I'm actually going to do my agility talk here on the show in early May. And the point of doing it on the show, even though you're technically not the audience, is to get some of your questions and responses and to have it on the YouTube channel so that you can send it to the people at your company who need to hear it. Your agile coaches, your product managers, your project managers, your program and portfolio managers, and all the other people who think UX makes pretty screens and let's just slide right through. Nick is nodding. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate the nod. Let me see what I missed in the chat room. Charlene says, Jesse James' book was one of the books we were told to read when I did my bachelor's for basic understanding. Yep. Kayleen says, oh my God, Reddit. It's so easy for anyone's comment to be pushed to the top. Yeah, that's true. Someone named Nat. Hello, Nat. Nat has a question. So I'm going to add Nat's question to the end of the list because we're doing all of our questions in order. So thank you, Nat. And let's see what else. Kayleen says, beautiful graphic, especially the outlier. I think that person might have drawn that before I said, where do you wish you learned when the product is flawed? Not when you learn this now. I think they're probably like, oh, too late. I submitted. But Kayleen says it's a powerful visual, Deb. I hope so. I hope that more and more people will realize that's when we should know that we're headed in the wrong direction and we suck and because the next slide I show is the same graph and I show here's where Agile and the MVP want us to learn this. And here's where CX and UX want us to learn this. And there is a mountain of corporate expense and risk between these 2 points. So that's the way that I'm showing that. Thank you. That's the way that I'm showing that.
Do you know what? This is where me and the government actually agree on something. The whole DABLE, Discovery Alpha Beta Live, is a good structure for this stuff, and it supports that early failure and to throw stuff out and learn about it. It's all I'm wholly behind that, and a lot of product coaches are teaching this stuff. It's a good. I can't find where it breaks at the moment. It's a good way forward.
Yeah, I don't know why we went with MVP and released the least we can to claim we put something out. There's no customer on the planet who is thrilled with the least the company could put out. We're furious when we get this crap. So yeah, I see nothing wrong with. I'm not pro waterfall. I think there's room for improvement on waterfall, but I think there was nothing wrong with some of the older methods. Like for example, almost every company has fired their R&D team, and it shows. I barely see people who work in R&D anymore. I barely hear about companies investing in R&D other than your Apples and some of your big fortunes. Everybody else read Lean Startup and said we are cool and fast and we break things and we release stuff and then we figure out if it was any good. And I go, congratulations, you're not two guys in a garage.
No, but that R&D function that was traditionally a skunk works or whatever you would call that thing is often these days an innovation department, team, or person. It has been that word innovation seems to have replicated or replaced R&D.
Some places. Or some places it's now design sprints. Yeah. Let's all get in a room and put sticky notes on a wall and invent things no one's ever seen before. Because that's exactly how it goes every time. Just put everybody in a room and reinvent the whole world that they've never seen. Yeah. Thanks to the people waiting for their questions to be answered. We should move on unless there's something you're burning to say.
I was going to say one thing real quick. Give me the absolute least you could possibly produce, said nobody ever.
Yeah.
No user, no customer ever requested that.
Yeah, that's what I keep saying. Charlene, I see your question. Yeah. I'm going to add it to the list. No user was like, I did a talk at a DevOps conference in Tel Aviv a few years ago, and I was trying to make the kind of point Darren just made, and a guy started heckling me, and he goes, oh, well, my users don't mind when I give them something, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, how do you know they don't mind? Oh, I asked them. I asked them if they mind if I give them this or minimize this, and they say, yes, that's fine. And I go, They could say anything to you. Like, this doesn't, was this a
Right.
survey you put out? Like, do you mind waiting for the product a little bit longer? Or do you mind if I give you, like, and they, oh yeah, whatever. Like, are you sure? And the guy kept heckling me. And I was like, what do I say to get this guy to shut up? Because I'm looking around the room and people are rolling their eyes. So I said, okay, people are not enjoying this guy. And I figured, well, I'm in Israel. And, so I just kind of leaned into the microphone and I said, do you want to switch places? and and he got up and left. And I said, okay, I guess that works in Israel. So there you go. How to deal with the heckler. Let's go back to some of our questions just so we can keep going along. Kayleen asks, what research goes into making a style guide? Heuristics? I guess style guide, component library, design system. Have any of you ever worked on those or familiar with what research goes into them?
A little bit. I've never seen one implemented. I've been involved when people were trying to work on getting one implemented. Now, apparently, it's a really hard push to get a style guide implemented at a company, and there's a lot of buy-in across the board. In the instance that I remember, the heuristics, I don't think the person responsible for it knew. I told them. I performed a heuristic evaluation on the system up to the degree that they had produced at that time. And I said, hey, everything here looks good. It passes the heuristic test. It's matching. Not just, when you say heuristics too, a lot of times people immediately think about Jacob Nielsen, who he just updated the model that he put out in the early to mid 90s, by the way. It was just updated in the last few months. But there's other ones that I think that are more practical. I personally like Abby Covert's, the one that she did with the
she was a guest here
with the Understanding Group. Yes. Fantastic stuff because it's more practical. It's something, especially with all this collaboration that we do and all this engaging that we do with stakeholders where they're getting involved in the processes. The one that Abby and Tug produced are easier for people to resonate with. It's easier for people to understand. When you put, I don't know if anybody's ever done this, but if you put different heuristic models in front of people, you get different reactions from the people who are seeing it, whether they're designers or not. And so Tug, Abby and Tug did a good one. Susan Weinschenk and Dean Barker did one that was really, really good, that went a step further. And it's actually, even though Jacob Nielsen was the first one that produced one, that produced a heuristic, a set of heuristic guidelines, it's actually the least practical. Still, even with the updates today, it is the least practical of the group. It didn't change with the times. I mean, it's produced in the early to mid 90s. AOL hadn't even, AOL was the pièce de résistance in online engagement at the time. That you can't possibly, you got to shift. Things have changed a lot. And so Abby and Tug did a fantastic job. They're updating theirs again as well too. So you can use a heuristic guidelines to make sure that what you're doing works. Beyond that, you have to conduct additional research, apply those patterns in that style guide in an actual situation, subject it to usability testing, and look at that you get how on point you are, because you do not want to put anything in your style guide that's not going to pass that test
and isn't accessible.
Otherwise, yeah, readability is a part of it, readability is a part of it, scannability is a part of it. All these different elements, findability, all of these elements come into play. You don't want to get a bunch of things that are pretty, which is what I hear about some of these popular styles. Google has some, there are a few libraries that you can get and you can tweak and use at your company, and they haven't been tested a lot of times. So you have to tweak what's out there because people just, especially if the developers went to town or even the visual design people go to town, they're not thinking about heuristics and things of that nature. So you have to do that work when you bring it in-house.
Nick, anything to add about research and design systems and style guides?
I don't have much experience of this at all. It's usually something much more in the visual design or UX UI type space. However, that said, I was working on a big passport infrastructure project. And the interaction designer I was working with, it was a GDS project, if that means anything to you. In the UK here, we have the Government Digital Service, which sets out a whole standard for how we build digital products and services in government. And it's actually really good. It's really amazing, actually. There are bits that needs updating, but on the whole, it's fantastic. The point being is the interaction designer had created something that I tested. It involved radio buttons. The radio buttons we used were pure library buttons, and they were approved buttons. They didn't do well, though, with visually impaired users. Robert, the interaction designer, redesigned a much larger kind of iris, of the button, so that the radio bit was much more visually distinct and much bigger. It was up by about 10 points, and it was just bigger and better and bolder, and it passed with flying colors. And so we submitted it back to the GDS people who tested it and approved it. It's now in the library, and for the past 4 or 5 years it's being used. And that's what I mean. All these distributed projects around government all inform the mothership, which can then maintain this library. And that's an amazing, brilliant part of the whole thing. So that's the only experience that I have.
Super. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Celine says, I like GDS and how it has improved. Our next question is from Abi and was a follow-up to part of his earlier question. And the question is, what do you think about the future of PWA, progressive web apps? Nick, progressive web apps, you're nodding. I'm going to pick on you.
I mean, these things have been. I've been working with some Israeli startups who have been really wanting to go at these things because they are, I think device independent, allows for that universal development across lots of platforms, are install-less, but yet give you hardware access. Basically, best of all worlds. That's my naive understanding. I haven't since then, in the past 4 or 5 years, I think, actually worked on one. So for me, and at least where I come from, or at least the journey that I've been on, they're a bit like a mythical, like a Pegasus or a unicorn. They're a bit mythical. I've heard about them. They seem amazing, but I haven't actually come into contact with one yet knowingly.
Darren.
I have zero experience. I might know what they are under another name. I don't know them by that name.
Their name is Fred.
And a lot of times that's what happens. So I don't know what a progressive web application is, but you could actually show me something and not call it that, and I probably know what it is. I just don't call it a PWA.
And my answer would be it's like this mysterious ghost, because you keep hearing PWA, progressive web apps are going to be the future, but we're not even going to have apps anymore. We're not going to install apps. We're going to have PWAs. And I feel like I've been hearing that for 4 to 6 years. And like Darren said, I'm not sure I could name a progressive web app. I don't even know if I'm using them. I don't think I'm using them. So I think it's one of those things we keep hearing about, but I'm not sure they're really out in the wild so much. So I'm not holding my breath. Is it okay to move on to the next question or anything else to add? No. All right. Next question was Nat's question, but Nat, I hope you're still here, because I think we may have a follow-up question, because I found this a little bit hard to understand. It says, in my company, don't do research and focus much in UX. That's why I don't feel so capable of applying to new job. I believe I have only theoretical experience and not so practical. What can I do? I think we can mostly make sense of that. If you have a follow-up question for Nat, ask now to give Nat some time to answer. Can you make sense of that question?
Yeah, I can. I definitely can. Nat, you're low confidence because you've done all of the work. You've gone to conferences, you've read the articles and the books and watched people like us, and you've done all the legwork, but you haven't actually applied it in a project. And I know how that feels, because when I was in my younger, like more junior midweight type years, I'd go 6 to 12 months without actually doing any user research. And believe me, you go cold, you go stale, and then you've got to go back to a gig and apply to stuff, and your confidence is gone because you haven't done it recently. I totally understand. Unfortunately, that's just the way of this world. There's no easy way around that. The way to try to do that is to try to force the hand, or not force the hand, positively encourage your team, what have you, to get you to do the research, or you do it the Dr. Nick Maverick style and just do it anyway, which is a very powerful way of doing things, but you have to do that at your own risk, and you have to judge that. But I'd strongly advocate for JFDI, because if you don't do it, you're not going to get you have to I've had to make my own destiny sometimes. And that means crossing some lines, as long as you're not doing it illegally or unethically. And those are huge, big caveats. And you might get into really big trouble. And I've got into big trouble a couple of times, So it's a two-edged sword, but JFDI.
Just freaking do it. Darren, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, that is something like Dr. Nick said. This is something that we all, no matter what, whether it's research or information architecture or whatever aspect of UX you're engaged in, we all face it, and we're all, how can I say, hogtied, for lack of a better word, by the environment that we're in, if we allow it. So wherever you're working, that's the pinnacle, in a sense, of what's happening to you individually from an experiential perspective. So what I have always done, and it's on the line, the JDFI, is that the acronym you just used? One of the things I think that helped me is that I love UX so much that I don't stop when work is over. I continue. I never, ever stop. And that's when you know that you really have fallen in love with this discipline. And you start doing research on your own. Nobody paid you to do it. You just start digging. You start going to websites and redesigning on your own. Nobody paid you to do it. You just did it. You start digging into articles. Meetups are way more valuable than we think, because you go to something right now. People are sharpening their saws right now just because of the things we're listening to, and you begin to internalize and you go through things in your head and you start formulating these things and trying to see, how could I do this better? How could I do that better? And you start doing this on a regular basis, and that's what keeps you fresh. That's what will keep you from going stale, because you're always trying to learn. You're always trying to do better. And when you get to the point when you can't turn it off, now we're talking. I'll never forget going to the zoo. I've told this story. I'll go to the Detroit Zoo. I'll be real quick with this, Dr. Nick. I go to the Detroit Zoo. They fixed this, by the way, now, and I'll share this. I've got this old picture, and I'll share it here soon on LinkedIn to show you what I'm referring to. The wayfinding in the zoo was god awful. I hated going to the zoo because the experience was bad. The animals were half asleep because they had drugged them, I found out, to help keep them from escaping. But at any rate, I need to go to the restroom. And I find a sign. And you expect the sign to tell you where to go. And it said something to the line of, bears are this way, lions are this way, tigers are this way. And then the sign said restrooms, and it pointed straight down.
Just pee on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's implying. And we know that that's not it, but that's what you just said. Oh, really? Right here? I'm just going to do this right here? So no. So here I am trying to enjoy a day at the zoo, and boom, immediately I go into UX mode. And I start talking about the wayfinding and how bad it is. I took a picture of it. It was like, I didn't get that picture from them. I took the picture of this terrible wayfinding, which thank God they have fixed today. And now you can find out where you're going all the time. But that's bad. You're going there doing the pee dance, and the sign is pointing straight down to the ground. That's not helping. So it's really
Darren,
bad. But it's
Nick.
always. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
The US is particularly bad at public signposting. It's particularly bad. When my wife and I have been over there, I'm always, I'm the world's most boring dad like you, because I'm doing kids stop, I've got to record this, right? So that's one. But first of all,
that's me too, by the way. That's me too.
I loved what you said about the thinking, like once when you fall in love when you're thinking that way, and this is a bit like acquiring a language in the way that Debbie might be acquiring Italian, right? When you start swearing or thinking in that foreign language or dreaming in it, that you're finally fluent, or you've crossed that hump. And it's like when you start thinking in UX, then you're doing the right thing. So I was introduced to it by my mentor, Professor Harold Thimbleby, who he's a maniac for public service terminals, for ticket machines. I cannot use a ticket machine or a calculator without him like Yoda or like a Force Ghost, or, like on my shoulder going, why is that not an alphabetic keyboard, or blah, blah, blah. Right. So it's all about, once you get into that thinking, But I'm going to bring this onto a subject that is actually very, very, really serious, very topical. And I hope you don't mind me hijacking this for a minute, Debbie, because I wanted to ask Darren around this question, because it's a question around race. It's around some of the trouble that's going on in America right now, but it's also UX and HCI related.
Ooh.
And this is the perfect way to kind of lead it in. I was reading an article about there was a recent shooting in America last night, right? Another black man was killed by... Right. No, but there was another one that hit the news in the BBC here in the UK. So I think it's a much bigger one, right? And there's rioting and there's stuff going down, right? Apparently, as I understand it, the officer grabbed their taser by accident, grabbed their gun instead of the taser, shot them, and then went, oh shit, I've shot them, right? Now, my UX brain instantly is like, wait a minute, that's a UX problem. You've gone in the heat of an emergency, my life is under threat, and you've gone. Now, you telling me that your gun and your taser are on the same hip
and feel the same and have the same trigger.
Yes. How can that?
They don't have the same weight, though.
Sorry,
no, they don't, and they don't have the same trigger
it should
either.
be left-hand taser. It should be other hand. Why has it got to be your shooting hand? Can you not shoot with your weaker hand? Can you not be trained to do that? It should be non-lethal left, or less dominant lethal right, or something that's a fundamental trained. Anyway, do you get where I'm coming from, Darren?
Yes, and I don't know a lot about tasers, but I saw a picture because of course there's a lot blowing up on social media, and people don't realize UX. This is not digital, but UX is part of the issue. Why would you design a taser that has the same, even closely resembles the look and feel of a gun?
Was that the case? Because I'm not following the story. Was that the case?
Yeah,
did it look and feel like a gun?
Yes, it looked almost exactly like a gun. Why would you do that? From a risk mitigation, UX is about risk mitigation. That's one of the things that we do. We need to, if we do this, we're opening the door for these 7, 8, 9, 10 possibilities. So let's go back to the drawing board and let's modify this. That's what a skilled UX practitioner would do. When people complain, oh, I can't get a job, I don't have the experience, it's because we need experienced people. Just go get it like you do with any other job. You're not talking about getting a job at Burger King. You're talking about a job that requires a skill set. So get the skill and you'll be fine. Be patient, you'll be fine. But we need skilled people, because obviously somebody with no risk mitigation did that work, whether it was a UX person or a standard engineer. Somebody wasn't thinking. I also heard something else, and I'll throw this in there. While there is a UX element associated with it, the part that wasn't UX related was the fact that I saw this person's credentials. I saw this person's experience. I saw how long they had been doing this kind of work in general. And there was absolutely no way that, because she was not being threatened. So there was absolutely no reason for her to grab that. And the person also has a history of being connected to instances where people abused the law. She did what she wanted to do. She wanted to shoot the guy. Period. If that's going to happen, if that's going to come out that way with a jury, I don't know. But all of the details that I saw and all of the evidence associated with her experience with her, as soon as she touched it, I mean, before you go out, okay, I'm about to go out. We got a call. We're going out. All right, 10-4. We're on our way. I know what my taser feels like. I know what it looks like. I know that the weight of the gun, the contour, even though they're similar, the contour in the taser and the contour or weight, the way that it fits in the hand is slightly different. I know. I'm not a rookie. And I know the difference between my gun and a taser, which implies that this was she knew what she was doing. And because she had too much experience. Way too much experience. But back to the UX side of things, stop designing tasers that feel like guns to users because you think that that's going to be comfortable to them. If that's it, take your taser and don't take your gun.
No, absolutely. Or in the context of an officer's waistband, like utility belt, where you've got a nightstick and other weaponry, and you're in the context of a potentially emergency situation, yes, you can have a taser that looks and feels like a gun in other contexts, but in the context of an officer who has a lethal firearm, it cannot have another firearm that has the tactile familiarity of a lethal weapon.
Exactly.
In the same vicinity.
Exactly.
It's just not under emergency.
Yeah.
That's what we call in HCI a latent error. It's a latent error that becomes an active error in an emergency situation. And that's, I think, exactly what happened.
The question, yes, and it's not, is something going to happen? It's when is it going to happen?
Yeah, exactly that.
And that's not the only. And that's not the only one. That's just one of the main ones that hit the media, because people, Black people are being gunned down by police almost every week. You just don't hear about it.
Hey, thanks to Charlene for the donation of £2 British. We greatly appreciate that. It's breaking up the moment a little bit, but thank you for that. She wrote mic drop. So I believe her donation was for that. So thanks to everybody for going there. I know that's a difficult topic, and many of us really don't have any law enforcement training, but we can think of this from the perspective of CX and UX and some physical design of products. And, we also deal with this a little bit sometimes with what? Laundry thrown in the toilet? What is that? What is DOET? Who threw laundry in the toilet? Anyway, I forgot what I was going to say because Larry's not here. Darren's laugh is so infectious. But yes, don't throw, design of everyday things. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh. Right.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Well, yes. So perhaps moving on. So thanks to everybody for that. Nick's turned it into a drinking game. Back with an earlier question from Charlene, which was, it's up there now. Not a very UX or CX question, but when you're working with a client, sometimes the client takes ages to decide or come back with feedback. What do you, I'm missing the rest of the question. Where was it? Rolling. What do you something? What did it say?
What do you do when your client's not coming back to you and you've got a deadline to meet?
That must be it. I'm rolling back. I cannot find the original question in my chat. Sorry, I got cut off, Charlene. But anyway, someone start answering.
So the way that I've seen some of the best delivery leads, I'm sorry, I'll go. I'm seeing on.
She says, "What do you guys do while waiting?"
Okay.
I wouldn't say what to do whilst waiting. Honestly, you send her the thing and say, this is what we're going to do. And if you don't give me an answer by 5 o'clock or whenever it is on this date, this is what you're getting. That tends to what happen. And that puts a fire under their bottoms.
Darren.
Yeah.
That's probably not the right.
And I would say that it is a CX UX question because client management is a part of our job.
Yep.
A lot of people that are newer tend to focus on the deliverables and the artifacts and things of that nature. But the further up you go in your maturity, your personal UX maturity, the more you're going to be responsible for managing the stakeholders and things of that nature. And that's why the EQ, the emotional intelligence, becomes more important, because now here you are with a client, you need feedback because you got things you need to do and you're not getting a response. So in general, hey folks, I submitted this the other day and we have a deadline. So let's say I'm going to throw Agile into this, and you're operating within the sprint. I know you folks are busy, but we need a response because we need to iterate based on the response that we get from you. So it's really critical that we hear back from you by such and such a date. Please reach back out to me. Please let me know, and let me know if you have any questions. Is there anything I can do to help? So you're going to inquire. You're going to ask for additional information. You're going to let them know how important it is. You're going to inform them of what constraints you're dealing with or what challenge you're dealing with, and then you're going to sit back and let them be adults. We don't want to micromanage or go down that road in any way, form, or fashion. But you just want to let them know. But you don't just sit there, because there is one other issue that happens in the world of UX. People love blaming the UX people. They love to blame us. So you have to make sure that you're protecting your team and your operation and asking people to be responsive as they can possibly be, so you don't end up playing that blame game, because it does come up. more so than others in certain settings, but it does come up.
Yeah, and for me, I would say this is mostly not just client management, but a project management issue. And so when I am creating
Yes.
projects, I always have a very detailed project plan. And I say, we're going to do this, and it's this many work hours, and it's going to take this many calendar days, and it's dependent on this. So I do very detailed project plans, project management, sometimes Gantt charts. And I'm very clear with the client that there are points where we're going to need their feedback, their collaboration, their approval, whatever. If we don't get that, that will throw off the project plan. If they don't mind being late, hooray, we'll be late. But if being late is going to be a problem, then they're going to want to make sure they do their part. And that's where you have to have good project managers staying on top of that. Also, as an agency or freelancer, my contract says that if the client is late with anything that we're expecting from them, whether those are materials or those are decisions, that we are allowed to be late the same amount of days. Because in the old days, I had a few clients run a week or two late, and then when they got us the stuff, they were like, well, you're still gonna have this ready tomorrow, right? Because that was like our original next timeline. So now I in my contract, it says if you are late at all or need additional time or need to reflow the project plan, that's fine. But we get to be late the amount of time that you were late. So everything is going to reflow. And I have rarely had people be late after that. But then again, if you've worked with me in my agency context, I project manage quite actively, and I run a pretty tight ship. Darren.
Yeah, real quick too, because I think Dr. Nick has something on ready to share too. I didn't properly structure part of my Agile presentation, my Agile scenario. If you are in Agile, you're having stand-ups every day, right? So
yeah, that's when you're supposed to say I'm being blocked.
Yes, this is my blocker. This is my impediment. Not to throw anybody under the bus, but this is just reporting the facts. So I'm going to need that information. Now that will help people to sort of light a fire under people in some cases. When it works that way, when the culture is allowing for that, you want to make sure that people know that's an impediment. Don't be in a position where you say nothing, because if you're in a position where you say nothing, now it's all on you. And then there's going to be some issues.
And Kayleen's about to find out how I manage projects, because we're going to be working on something together. So Kayleen, prepare thyself.
Awesome.
Dr. Nick says, make it simple. Tell us more, Dr.
If you
Nick.
If you're asking somebody to do something to give you feedback, make it as easy as possible for them to do it. And then the lower effort or the lower perceived effort means there's a much greater chance you're going to get the response back in the time you want. It's a bit like saying, can you read that and get back to me? Or could you just look at this picture and get back to me? One of them is going to get you a much quicker response. And it's the same thing when you're asking client stuff. And that could be any kind of a stakeholder.
Yeah, I had the client we're working on right now. We wanted to slightly change our research plan, which would have added some time and money to the thing. So I had to write to the client and say, look, we had this slightly different idea for the research plan. It's going to add a week or two to our timeline and X $1,000. And here's how we're going to do it, and here's how I'm going to bill you for this, and here's the thing. And the guy wrote back and said, well, this sounds great. Do you need to write up a formal addendum to the contract for me to sign? I said, no, my contract is written where if you approve something clearly in email and you say, yes, I approve this, it becomes part of the contract. And he wrote back and he said, yes, I approve this. And I file it and I move on. And I think that the simpler you can make it for someone to understand what they have to approve or give and then do it, I agree with Dr. Nick. But again, in my world, having my contract has made all the difference. I think it was episode 15 where I read through my contract. Of course, get a lawyer to write your contract, but feel free to use many of the approaches and clauses that are in mine, because they've kept, I think the last time I had a fight with a client was 1998, which inspired me to change the contract. And since then, because I had a client who was like, she started throwing all this extra stuff at us and she expected it for free. And I said, we can't give you that for free. And her answer was literally, well, your contract doesn't say you're not giving it to me for free. And so I rewrote the contract to say, if it is not detailed in the scope and you have not agreed to it in writing, it is not part of the project. But I had to write that because I had this person who took advantage of it not saying that. You would think that if you say, this is what we're doing, that would be the end of it. You would never imagine, until it happened, that someone would take advantage of that and say, well, it doesn't say you're not doing it.
Part of their strategy was to
Yeah,
take
so
advantage.
that was the last time someone did that to me, because now in 3 places in my contract it says, if it has not been officially added to the scope and approved in writing, it is considered not part of this project. Charlene had another unrelated question 26 minutes ago. It says, I've got a question about heuristics. I read someone's paper. It went on the lines of the 10 heuristics defined should change with, oh God, I've got, this is a problem with YouTube. It cuts off people's things after a certain number of characters. Charlene,
It's
do you remember
weird.
your
There's
question?
a blank line right there.
I know Charlene, do you remember your own question from 26 minutes ago? I'm trying to find it back in the room, and
There it is.
You found it? What does it say? Can you read it out loud, please?
When you're dealing with people who undermine your efforts
No, that's
to
Elizabeth.
do proper UX. Oh, sorry.
That's
Oh,
a
God.
new question. Elizabeth, I'll put that
Well,
on the
my
end
bad.
as a new question. No, Charlene says
My
she'll
bad.
write it again. So please hold. Charlene's going to write it again. We'll answer hers. Then we've got technology is rapidly advancing question from Yasin, and then we'll get to Elizabeth's question. So Charlene's going to write hers. But YouTube, I think, stops at 200 characters. So sometimes I end up with these weird truncated things, and I apologize.
Thank you, Scott.
Scott
Thank you,
says, do
Scott.
an episode on the UX of YouTube. How about the
And
UX
that's
of the
why
YouTube
Google-
music app? Ouch.
I
Just
very
Google,
nearly did a
period.
rant. Yeah. Sorry, I very nearly did a think tank episode on YouTube alone but somebody beat me to it. There's a recent cartoon meme thing out there which talks about the evolution of YouTube, and the basically the joke is that nowadays it's videos in between ads, and that's what it's become. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's why I turned off ads. If you ever see an ad on one of my videos, please let me know, because I've turned them all off. This channel is completely free to you. All tips and donations are optional. And if you'd like to see emojis explode on the screen, please do super chat or super stickers to donate something here during the stream. Charlene says it was about 10 heuristics should be updated based on new devices and new tech. So it says 10 heuristics defined should update new tech, and what's your take on that?
Okay, I guess I'll start this one off.
Yeah.
That's what I was referring to when I was saying that he never updated it. It was like, are they still applicable with new tech and new devices? Yes, they are, but people weren't able to make the connections because of the way it was written. And they definitely were not available contextually at the time they were written. Whereas the newer models, the Susan Weinschenk models, there was another gentleman who did one, I can't remember his name, and it was mixed with, it started off talking about, it used the Abby Covert and Tug. Then in the middle, it had some information from Forrester, and then it had some other.
So he stole it from everywhere. He stole it.
He basically did, but it was actually the third. He was trying to illustrate that third layer, and it was actually pretty good. If you go to SlideShare and look up my talk on heuristics, you'll find it because I had them all included in there. The one from Susan Weinschenk and Dane Barker is good, and it's easy to apply it to what we're using today, even though it was written around, I want to say 2004, 2005, somewhere in there. I can't remember the exact date. And even the one that was written most recently is the one from Abby Covert and Tug, but it was just so pliable. It was so easy to apply it to the newer tech. So it's not that it can't be applied to the newer tech. It just takes more work, which is sort of contradictory when you consider who's actually using it, because we shouldn't have to work that hard.
The cognitive load of the heuristics.
Yeah, the cognitive load. Yeah, the cognitive load of applying the older heuristic, it can be done, but I'd rather use Abby, Covert, and Tug because it can be done more easily and it has more traction. It people pick up on it a lot easier when you're trying to communicate it. I actually had it redone and had it blown up on the wall in the office. So anybody coming past the UX department would actually see this thing, and it helped us to communicate about what it was. It helped them to understand what UX was, especially the UX UI crowd who thought that everything we did was visual. No, see all these things up here? We want to make sure things are accessible. We want to make sure things are legible. We want to make sure things are valuable, things of that nature. And that's a big footprint. And it's not as narrow as people try to make us seem. So yeah, it you can do it, but not without a bunch of not without some consternation that we really shouldn't have to deal with.
Can I put up the next question? Because we've got about 20 more minutes left, with thanks, of course, to Darren and Nick for giving us 2 hours of their time tonight. Please take a bathroom break if you need to. Do not use the bottle method. This was... hold on, I lost it. It was from Yasin.
Or the Detroit Zoo method.
Oh, my God. Don't pee on the floor. Yasin, here it is. I found it. Okay. Yasin asked, technology is rapidly advancing so fast, but understanding users is still relatively slow. Is that why UX is undervalued? And if so, how are you keeping up with this?
Yeah.
Ouch.
I think Dr. Nick's going to go first.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to on this one.
Okay.
UX was, when Darren, Debbie, and I started our UX careers, was about users and understanding them. It's only in the later years that UX, UI, and other visual designers have tried to rebrand, redefine UX as something different, something visual. We're coming back to it, but yeah, and design thinking. Well said, Debbie. There's a lot of other players in the market who are trying to take what not we created, but what UX is. And so the question was asked earlier, what about what happens when you're not doing user research? And Darren very rightly said you're not doing UX. And the point about UX and what makes UX unique in the digital or the world is it's all about the needs into the solution. It's about human needs, human behavior. There's no other concern for that anywhere across the creative industry, across the digital industry. So the one unique selling point or the unique identifier that UX has is fundamentally about users and their behavior. So yeah, we've had some bad press or bad fake news, not dearth, that's the wrong word. There's been a flood of fake news in recent years. If you follow the conferences like Behavior and Design and people like us who are all behaviorally motivated and user-driven and not predominantly visual people, you'll be on the right path to where UX is coming back to and will carry on to go, if you know what I mean. It's just been a shit detour. That's me, sorry.
We'll get there. Darren, anything to add from the original question? Oh.
You're still echoing, Deb.
Oh, sorry. Did it stop? Did it stop? That it should be back now. I don't know if Darren will need to rejoin us, but at least it froze him in a perfect frame for him.
I was going to say, that needs to be his new profile picture.
Yeah, I mean, hi.
Yeah, back.
I got a picture.
Screen.
Sorry about that. We had a little blip in time there, but and the chat room started crying without us, so they miss us. They missed us already. That was just a temporary blip in time, and we're back. So Kayleen is like,
okay,
no.
All right, so where was I? So can I pick up at the same spot?
If you can, because I've forgotten.
Yeah.
Last thing I heard was I was echoing. So go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to piggyback on what Dr. Nick was talking about. It's really sad. The rebranding of UX I actually did a podcast called Overcoming the Ambiguity, or the Mirage of UX Ambiguity is what I called it, that people they're rebranding UX and making it look like it's one thing when it's really, and that's where I get that dystopian UX concept from. They're acting like, and when I say that, I was talking to somebody earlier today. It makes me think about the Mad Max movies, especially Road Warrior, where you see all these little kids running around pretty much raising themselves. And Mad Max actually, the character actually befriends some of these little kids and things of that nature. That dystopian view where authority is seen as something oppressive and something we don't need, and they're always portrayed as mean and out of place and things of that nature. And then all these people who don't really know anything are the authorities of the day, and everybody does what they want. People keep trying to present, especially if you go to somewhere like Reddit. I cannot believe how ridiculous things are on Reddit when it comes to UX. And that's where I got that Mad Max picture in my mind, was because you have all these kids, the equivalent of kids, trying to help each other. You know, you're 3 years old, somebody else is in diaper, and they're 3 years old. Everybody's asking each other for ideas. You're all wearing diapers. You're not going to get very far. That's just not realistic. And so they're trying to rebrand UX. They're trying to make it visual because they don't want to learn the basics of the discipline. So they're trying to, I think Dr. Nick said it once, stop trying to take UX and rebrand it to what fits you. I think I heard Debbie say this once before too. Stop trying to rebrand it and make it look like what fits you so that you can ignore all these other things that you really need to know. If you try to rebrand UX, you're not going to be able to bring the value that UX is supposed to bring. You can talk all that. For every dollar you invest, you get $100 in return. That's only if the UX is real. Not only are you not bringing value if you're not doing real UX, you're costing the company money. So people need to understand that information architecture is critical. Without it, you have no findability. Without doing research, you don't know if the information architecture you put together is really going to work. If you don't follow usability guidelines and heuristic guidelines, you don't have anything to build your designs on. And if you don't engage in interaction principles and put the interface together to do the interface design the right way, nothing works. And all of these things come together to formulate the UX. I love what Dr. Nick said when he explained HCI, because I believe everything he said, but he said it way more eloquently than I did, that you got to understand all the concepts. And then you translate that into that practicum, so to speak, that now you have to start getting into the practical component, but you got to know all the basics. You got to know it, or you have nothing to go on, or now you're just going to another design sprint and you're spitballing and acting like you've done some work. But that's not it. Standards exist. The basics of the discipline exist. And that's what we have to build on. And it wasn't until this last round of UX people in the last 7 to 8 years or so that ignored everything that preceded them. We built on what existed when we came on board. Now the people want to come in and they want to act like you guys are gatekeepers. No, we're asking for quality. Fantastic piece that Dr. Nick put out the other day. I said something to the extent yesterday, just because we're passionate doesn't mean we're angry. Just because we're asking for or we're endorsing and asking for quality doesn't mean that we're gatekeepers. Just because we're knowledgeable doesn't mean that we're discounting anybody else. I actually had somebody once, I made a statement and somebody came and they said, Darren, you're not the only one that knows anything. Well, I didn't say that I was. So where in the world did that come from? This paranoid, schizophrenic foolishness that's going on in the workplace is not helping anybody. And it's hurting the discipline. Never said anything like that. I got chewed out once for telling somebody what degree I had. Well, you asked me to get up and introduce myself and share my credentials. Now you're going to hang me from the street pole, because I said I had a degree. So we've got to come back to a point of realization. We've got to be accountable. We got to hold people accountable, and we got to help people to grow the right way, and not just I want to be in a UX position, but you don't have any standards, and I just want to say UX and I'm UX. Because a lot of people are actually doing that, and they're applying for jobs and they're getting jobs that we can't sometimes doing that stuff because there's no UX maturity level in the organizations. So anyway, mini rant.
Let me just give you a terrible example. I desperately want to name this person, but I can't and I won't. But I worked with somebody 5 or 6 years ago who came in with a PhD in neuroscience. So there's nothing much, not a lot of applicability here, at least not at the brand that I was working at, right? And she came in as a conversion, as a web analyst and a conversion person. I've recently seen that she's changed her title. She's now somehow a professor of UX psychology within 4
Okay.
years.
Okay.
Right?
That's a sharp
Oh,
left turn.
God.
Another person I worked with at the next gig, who was also a web analyst, is now set up their own user testing agency and has actually copied my LinkedIn banner. Literally copied it. So there's a lot of people
Wow.
out there who are looking at people like us and going, I like what you've got and I'm just going to take it. I'm going to take the visuals, but I've got no idea about the meaning behind it. And so all you're seeing are these people who have built themselves out of pieces from everybody else, but it's one big facade. There's nothing behind it. And I've got a lovely message from somebody yesterday on LinkedIn who's a chief experience officer somewhere saying, Nick, I'm really scared. I don't know anything. Right? There are people who have, it's like Darren said, the kids in Mad Max who are bringing themselves up on their own. If you bring yourselves up on your own like that, you might feel like $1 million and you might have a massive title, but you're going to have to defend like hell against people who know better. And it's a very uncomfortable, nervous or anxiety leading life. That's how mental health goes out the window. And that's not how you want to live.
And I think that many of these...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm kind of going there, Darren. I think that, when I see someone start to fight me on LinkedIn, usually the first thing I do is go and look at their LinkedIn history. Because I say, if they're fighting me, and especially if I've just said one of my very typical things, because I never show up on LinkedIn and go, you're fat and ugly. I don't go for the ad hominem. I don't go for, I don't take low shots. I don't deal in personal attacks. So when I see someone attacking me, I usually go to their LinkedIn and I look for where in their career they jumped into CX or UX from something else where they probably just jumped into it. Someone gave them some sort of weird chance. And I had a woman fighting with me a few days ago on LinkedIn. She really wanted to make sure I looked discredited when I said that I didn't like design thinking. Like she was really working not to make design thinking look good, but to make me look bad. So I said, okay, let's see what her horse is in what race. And when I looked back at her, she had many, many years of marketing, and marketing is lovely and important. And then she appeared to have learned design thinking at some point, and then somehow became like the vice president of customer experience and design at a very famous American bank. And her description of her job was about how she's utilizing design thinking. And I said, well, okay, I get it. This person needs to make me look bad. Now, of course, instead, they should be making design thinking look good. But this person needs to make me look bad, because if design thinking ever crumbles the way I think it should, someone's going to take a look at her CV or resume or background and go, okay, design thinking is no longer a thing. What can you do? And her answer will be marketing, and I hope she gets a lovely job in marketing. She seemed highly qualified in marketing, not trying to poop on her there. But I find that when people are fighting, especially one of the three of us, when I go into their LinkedIn, the story is usually there. They're usually a boot camp instructor. For me, they're usually a boot camp instructor. There's someone who guessed their way into CX or UX after marketing or visual design or creative direction. And it's really important to them that I personally look bad. And I'm just amazed every time, because I don't think of myself as someone who loses a debate. And every time they try to catch me on really weird stuff, and some of you end up seeing it on LinkedIn, and I don't know. I always go like, really? Someone really wants to take me on? Like, and afterward, and I always go easy on them too. Like, I don't get personal, and I don't go, I saw your LinkedIn and you look like a total fraud. I just
I do.
I'm taking the high road, and I just say, here's why design thinking is garbage, and it's going to fall apart. And when it falls apart, the people who pushed it the hardest should be held accountable. And that might be you. Let's take a quick look at the chat room. We do have one question left from Elizabeth. That will be our last question today, because we're almost out of time, even with our 12-inch extended dance remix version. Charlene says, I just want to keep reading and learning about UX and CX in the right way. Good. That's why you keep getting good jobs. Kayleen says, lack of self-awareness. Yassine says, toxic positivity. Elizabeth
Yes.
says, I thought places with CXOs would mean they have high UX maturity. I guess not. No, just look on LinkedIn and watch these people's backgrounds. And very often you'll see the story of someone who tripped and fell into something called customer experience, very often from customer support and call centers and marketing. Ikening is here. Glad to see you, but you're a little late. We're almost done. Design thinking is a sweetened poison that deludes people into thinking they're doing real UX. Yes. And Kayleen says, I am super thrown off by the quality of discourse in LinkedIn comments. I see the people arguing with you guys. Poor arguments, selective hearing, 9 yards. Yeah, I'm surprised by it time after time. I'm not too sure why people think I'm an easy target. And I had one a week or so ago, and I was pretty sure it fell into the mansplaining bucket. And I tried to not rush into that bucket because I don't want this to be about gender. But I ended up there because there was a guy who had seen an article about why I didn't like design thinking, and he just started like naming cognitive biases and logical fallacies and trying to tell me that I was guilty of these things. And I felt like he had just learned these words and was taking them out for a test drive. And he said didn't make any sense. And I was like, do I tell him he's mansplaining me or do I go in another direction? So I have to tell you, when you see me fighting these people, I really do stop and think about, how do I want to be perceived by now? Because I no longer see it as I'm fighting person X. I see it as everybody who's interested in what I have to say on LinkedIn is going to see this. And what version of myself do I want them to see? Do I want them to see a whiny defensive person? Do I want them to see a fighter? Or do I want them to see a calm, thoughtful person who's trying to argue the points rather than the people? So I do my best to try. I wasn't as good as that 2 years ago, and Amy Dalton wrote to me privately and was like, the LinkedIn version of you and the YouTube version of you don't match. And I will always be grateful to Amy Dalton for saying that to me. And so I cleaned up my LinkedIn version of me and stopped picking stupid fights. So we've got another question from Elizabeth. I don't want to forget it. I've got it here in the queue. Elizabeth says, when you're dealing with people who undermine your efforts to do proper UX, do you have any strategies on how to document those conversations in the event the project fails and you're blamed? Basically, how do you ensure you were correct and the stakeholders or project manager or IT didn't listen? I do have advice on this, but I'd like to hear from our doctors and nearly doctors. Dr. Nick, do you want to handle this one first?
Sure. I hate this because this is politics and bullshit. It's so far away from the work front, if you know what I mean, from the coal face. But you do have to cover your bottom. You have to cover your bum. So effectively, if somebody said don't do this, and you have to drop them an email or something recorded, obviously, that says, look, I strongly I recommend you don't do this for reason X, Y, and Z. If you don't do these things, then terrible things will happen. Love, Nick, or something along those lines. Then when it does hit the fan, you've obviously got something that says, look, I told you not to do it. You chose not to do it. Okay, it's on you, not me. I mean, it's that simple in my world. I haven't had this happen too many times, to be honest. It's not undermining my efforts to do proper UX. It's normally, can we just do one round of testing with 3 people? No, we need to do 2 rounds with 8 in each round, or whatever it is, But that's it from me. It's just, that's nasty politics. I hate that stuff.
All right, Darren.
For me, it's about 2 things come to mind. One is document, and I don't do it to cover myself. I just know that that's one of the benefits. Because if you do it to cover yourself, then you're putting that ahead of trying to give quality work or deliver quality work. So I just want to deliver. Okay, here are my recommendations. I'll give my presentation to the team. I do my decks in a way with 2 things in mind. I want to do it for the people that are present, But I also want to do it for the people that are not present, because the people that are not present are usually the ones that come back and start the problems later. So I do it so that it's all inclusive. I even recently delivered a heuristic analysis and did the whole thing by video. I didn't want anybody to assign a tone to what I said. So I launched Camtasia and I delivered an entire heuristic evaluation. So they heard every thought that was in my head. I got it out there. Everybody got the presentation the exact same way. And I've actually secured a license for Camtasia at my last few employers so that I could do exactly that. Then everybody's got the sneezies now. But then there was this other time, and then this was, I don't recommend that you do this. I just got to tell the story because I think it's funny. But I worked for this one company. I got to sneeze. Big Blue. And so, no, I was faking it, and I was trying to say who it was without saying it. But and I didn't do that. I didn't execute well. But I got it. I was working for a company where people were stealing my ideas. I was the only UX person, the only real UX person at the time at that company. They did not know what UX was, but they brought me in. And when you go into an environment that has a low UX maturity level and you have a high UX maturity level, you're not going to be valued usually or understood the way you should. And so after stealing literally 10 of my ideas, they turned around right after that and tried to start setting me up. It just so happened that I had a habit of, I'm a terrible note taker. So I like to record things and then go back and listen to the recording later. I don't want to concentrate on taking notes. I want to concentrate on listening to you. And I would do a recording so I could go back and listen to the recording and then take notes and come up with to-do items and such from the recording. So that's what I was doing. There was no ill intent or anything of that sort. Well, it's a good thing I had that practice, which I had to stop right after my boss found out, because one of the people told me not to do something. Oh, you don't need to do that. Don't worry about that, Darren. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. A week later, my boss in our weekly meetings said, hey, Darren, you were supposed to do this and it wasn't done. I have an issue with this because you didn't do. I said, well, that couldn't be the case, because at the 7-minute, 42-minute mark of that meeting that I had with that particular person, they told me not to do it. And that's why I didn't do it. Oh, now everybody's afraid and everybody's running for cover. And so just to tell you how important it is to document things and to restate things when at the end of meetings, to make sure I understood you correctly. We're going to do this, 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 and this, and get the okay, yes, okay, I got it. And then send an email. This is what I took away from that meeting. This is what I understood. Are these the next steps? Is this what I should be looking at and focusing my efforts and my attention on? It's good to do that because in this case, these people were being vindictive. Sometimes people do it and they do things that look like they're vindictive and they're not trying to be, but document, back to my original point, document. And that's going to save you in the long run.
I'd like to add an anecdote to that if we can possibly run a little bit late. But I also promote documenting everything. It's in my book. It's everywhere I go. I tell people absolutely document everything. Of course, legally, you usually can't record people without their knowledge and permission, but still document everything you can. And some years ago, I was working on a project where the product manager was trying to dictate that's Charlene saying, I recorded well. The product manager was trying to dictate the design. And she was being somewhere between passive-aggressive and aggressive-aggressive about it. And she had some pretty terrible ideas for what it should be. And I had a different set of concepts I was working with. And the product manager said, well, just wireframe my idea. And I said, well, I don't want to wireframe your idea because your idea isn't a strong idea. It's not the right way to go. And she goes, well, if you don't have time to wireframe my idea, I can wireframe my own idea. And I said, oh, no, I have time, but I'm not going to do it because this is a bad idea. Well, no, we should really wireframe my idea. And I said, let me escalate this within my team and get back to you. So I went to my team leader because I was at the senior level. So I had a lead who was wonderful, wonderful. Downside was that product manager and team lead were good friends in real life. But I went to my team lead and I said, so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. I caught her up on it. And she goes, all right, she goes, why don't you wireframe her idea, but then we'll work together to list in the annotations all of the reasons why we've decided this is not the right direction to go. And I think by then we had 7 reasons why we thought her idea was bad. And I said, no, let me tell you what this woman's going to do. She's going to cut out the wireframe and take off the annotations, and she's going to put it into a PowerPoint and say, this is the wireframe of the idea we're going with. And my lead said, oh, no, she'd never do that. And I remember these two are friends.
Uh-oh.
They've gone to Burning Man together, like they are buddies. And she goes, no, she'd never do that. And I said, I will bet you $10 that she will cut out the wireframe of her idea, remove the reasons why we're not doing it, and present it at the next meeting as the idea we're going with. No, she'll never do that. I said, okay, I'm going to do what you said. I'm going to wireframe her idea and list 7 reasons right next to it why we're not doing it. Guess what? Y'all know how this one ends. Cut to the next meeting, and product manager starts running her PowerPoint on the screen, and there's 6 of us in the room, including me and the lead, because the lead came to this one. And she, of course, puts up the cut out wireframe of her idea. She goes, and this is the idea we'll be going with. And I said, no, it's not. We gave you that idea with a list of 7 reasons why it's not the right idea to run with. We gave you the idea that we've decided on. I escalated it to my team lead and other people in my department. We have the design for this, and it is not that one. That is your idea. We don't want you pushing your idea. And she was like, this meeting is over, and she wanted to she didn't know what she was going to do with that. And she found some reason to complain to my manager about me. So my manager calls me in to talk, and I loved him. He was a wonderful guy. I miss him. He was great. And he's like, she said, blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, there's some truth to that. That's fine. I said something that was out of line, whatever. But let me tell you what she's doing and why I lost my cool and said something I didn't. And you're right. I said something I shouldn't have, and I'm sorry. And I told him, he goes, she did what? He goes, can you prove this? And I said, yeah, here's my wireframe with the annotation, and here's her PowerPoint, which she just sent out to everyone who attended the meeting, that shows this is the idea we're going with. And he goes, okay, never say that thing again. I'm going to go fix this. And he goes running out of the room. And I think it's so important to have all this documentation. We don't have time for the other story, but there's another story where I knew my boss's boss was setting me up to fail, and I was just saving all the emails. And when I finally quit and I was going to get that exit interview, I said to HR, how long do you normally do exit interviews? And they said, about a half hour. I said, good, book 2 hours. And they were like, what? I said, yeah, I have a couple of emails you need to see. And I had all of these emails where I had purposefully been given impossible tasks. You're not making the right deliverables on your project. And then I write back and I say, well, what deliverables should I make? And they say, well, just guess. Just guess and pick something else. And I go, well, no, if I'm guessing wrong now, then I must be guessing wrong. Tell me what deliverables this project requires, and I'll make those instead. Well, we don't know. And so, I went to HR with all of this stuff, and I'm glad that I have it. So I'm definitely a documentation person. I'm definitely a save emails person. I'm not a record conversations person, just because I grew up in a family of lawyers, and I know you're not supposed to do that. But I think that the documentation is really important. Sometimes it covers your butt. Sometimes it solves a later problem. Sometimes it explains all kinds of things. I'm not always the most popular person in the room because I have this stuff. And like Darren's story, I'm the person who says, oh, you thought I didn't do this thing for this reason? Well, guess what? Here's the email from this person saying do it this other way. So I did it that way. Oh no. Oh, who do we pass the buck to now? So these can end up awkward situations. You may not end up working there for much longer, either by your doing or someone else's doing. There may be gaslighting and other abuse and toxic stuff that's happening in these places, but I still document I can until I am quitting. And then I hand them all my documents. When I left Macy's, and I'll name that name, when I quit Macy's, I wasn't entitled to an exit interview because I was a contractor. And I said, I want an exit interview. You need to know what's going on. And they said, no, you're a contractor. We don't interview contractors. So I wrote a 9-page letter with a whole bunch of documentation in it. And I said, fine, you don't want to interview me? Here's a 9-page letter. I hope you read it. But basically what's going to happen is your entire department is going to quit and the entire thing is going to be rubble and you're going to have to pretty much fire whoever's left over and start over. And most of the department quit in the next 6 months. And then they ended up firing the entire building and closing the office. And I'm not saying I predicted that, but I'm just saying, like, I'm going to give people documentation whether they like it or not. And they don't. You know, you are not going to make friends at the lunch table on this one. You're going, you know, I've had people say to me, talking to you is like talking to a lawyer. And I say, thank you. So, you know, I think that, you know, it's, as Charlene says in the chat room, it's great when we have managers who support us. Sometimes we do. I've been very lucky with a few very wonderful managers, and I've had some managers who were absolute garbage. There was one who was not my manager at Macy's, but he was another manager at Macy's, and they'd lent me to his team because he was short a person. And when I went to him, I had an issue with a product manager, and the product manager's manager got involved to like bitch me out on a Saturday. And so I went to my temporary manager and I said, I need you to get involved here. The product manager got his manager involved here. This is now a giant pile of bullshit. I need you to please come in and have my back on this one. And he literally emailed me this, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. And he wrote, "You're a big girl. Figure it out."
Wow.
And I forwarded that to my regular manager. And I said, just so you know what it's like working under this guy. Thing one, I miss you. Thing two, this is not managerial. This is not managerial, and this doesn't fly. And I will figure it out, and I will take care of this because I can do this. But I thought escalating it to him was the right thing to do, but evidently he can't be arsed. So these are some of my stories. I hope they were helpful or entertaining. Mostly the chat room is saying, ouch. We're, of course, running late after a 2-hour stream, so I'm going to have to play us out of here. So final words from each of our guests. Darren, what would you like to say to everybody, and how can we find and follow you online?
Okay, my final words are, I'm going to throw in a little 20-second piece on the example that Debbie just gave. When I've encountered people like that insist on you using their designs, I do not fight them. I do their designs, and then I test them.
That's what I was going to say, Darren. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to do that. At Macy's, we weren't allowed to test designs. We were so lean and awesome, they were just going to get released.
But if you can, test them, because what they will not fight against the data that comes back in the research.
Yes, they will. I have a story about that, but no time for it. But go ahead.
Right. So anyway, that's what I did, and it worked. So we see it doesn't work all the time, but it was an option for me, and I did it, and I usually use that to shut folks down. But you know where to find me: on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram now. It's UX Uncensored. We got the UX Uncensored YouTube channel. I'm 10 subscribers away from being able to customize my YouTube URL. So please, if you haven't followed me, it'll help me in getting things started, because I don't want that long, weird string. A new episode of The World of UX with Darren Hood is out today. If you already have access, you've already seen it. I'll share it in a little bit. The Facebook channel, I'm actually thinking about shutting it down because it's just a repeat of everything that's happening on Twitter. But that's where you can find me. Oh, one other thing, got to throw this in there. I haven't talked to Debbie or Dr. Nick yet, but I'm throwing this out there. I am considering starting a social media, a private social media network, just for focusing on UX, separate from Twitter, separate from LinkedIn, separate from Instagram and all these other terrible, toxic sources. So be on the lookout for that. I'm thinking I want to have you guys on my show and do the nightmares. I actually have a bunch of people lined up to talk about UX nightmares. just to talk about the stories, because there's nightmares and then there's how did you handle it? How did you overcome it? I think people need to know those things. So that's where you can find me. I'll let you know about that social media bit, because there's a little bit of work that's going to go into it, and I'm not 100% sure if we need to do it. So if I am convinced, you'll hear about it when we roll it out. Oh, and the UX Chit Chat Hour. Don't forget about that. The last Thursday of every month on AirMeet, and you will find that event. We're using the event feature on LinkedIn to talk about that now. And we've been having a ball out there. This will be our 5th month, and it's becoming more and more popular when we're having a ball. It's supposed to be an hour and a half long, and people don't like to leave. So,
it's like this. It's like this. We're
yeah.
We're never leaving. Thank you, Darren, so much. Dr. Nick, you have just rejuvenated your YouTube channel. So how can we follow you?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I've just started a series of thought pieces, I guess, called Think Tank. And I've just published another one. They're normally about 7 to 10 minutes long, so they're short and bite-sized. Today's topic is all about adversity and why it's not necessarily a bad thing. So that kind of feeds into exactly what Darren was saying. I definitely would support a nightmares type thing. I mean, it's going to be difficult for all of us to talk because we all want to work again, so we'll have to do that in an appropriate way. So yes, please tune into the UX Psychology channel on YouTube. That's me, and that's where you can find Think Tank. And I'm also obviously very noisy on LinkedIn. So even if you don't come and find me, you'll probably hear me shouting somewhere. That's it. If I can help at all, please get in touch. And thank you very much for having me, Darren and Debbie.
Yeah, thanks to both of you. Thanks for staying late and sharing the stories and the fun. Thanks to everybody for staying through a 2-hour episode. And we'll be doing this again on Tuesday, May 11th. Will be our once a month Three Musketeers version with Darren and Dr. Nick. Kayleen says time for bed. I assume she means me because she is on East Coast of America. It's really time for late lunch over there. So I think Kayleen is telling me to go to sleep. It's 8:45 here. Why not? I'll turn on the electric blanket and fall apart. I don't know how many of you are involved in the marketing world, but tomorrow I'm doing a keynote for the American Marketing Association. So if you happen to be attending that, I'll see you there. We'll also be having our monthly Slack meetup also on AirMeet. So check the Slack channel for that. Let's see, Thursday, no broadcast. Friday, reaction stream. You all sent me more master's degrees in boot camp, so I'm going to react to those. And tune in on Monday when we'll actually do another podcast with Michelle Ronson talking about transitioning into user research. Tuesday the 20th will be Office Hours Ask Us Anything with special guest Larry Marine. So come and ask your stuff there. And Wednesday the 21st, I'll be wrapping up my arc on my micro lessons of my fake observational research by writing some sort of fake report. So on that note, I'm going to play us out of here. Everybody be well and safe. Thanks again to the $3 Canadian donation from Wilson at the beginning of the stream. And I'll see everybody very soon. Thanks again and bye. Delta CX, available for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training. Contact us for a free consultation.